So, Aaron, when we think about Total Sport, I guess for people who are into lifestyle businesses, this would be the ultimate lifestyle business because you get to do something you're obviously very passionate about. How did it start?
But pretty organically, actually. It was I had one job post university, which was an event management job at Sport Auckland, which is part of the Regional Sports Trust Network. And had always been very into sport, more traditional sports though. Had grown up playing rugby and cricket and soccer and the like, but was always outdoor, coming from that boarding school background where we did everything we could to get outside and just play with our mates. It was very much the culture that was ingrained into us, and so that was always something I was into, and it was kind of the thing that I liked more than perhaps applying myself to my studies, was being outside and doing stuff. So post university, and managed to stretch a commerce degree over nearly a decade with a few overseas trips popped in here and there. I came back and got this one job and was sort of, I guess, like a lot of people, just not really sure about exactly what I wanted to do. Liked sport. My mother had been into events, so I thought, okay, well, let's see what we can do there. And like you hear the story so many times, kind of got an opportunity through someone that I knew, through a really close family friend, and was given a job that I didn't deserve to get based on the calibre of others that had applied for that job, but kind of got to, I sort of liken it to, that was the trade, that was my apprenticeship in events. Learned how to put events on, learned a little bit about the sports industry, recreation, that kind of thing. And then just kind of felt this inkling to do something a bit different and to do something for myself. Wasn't that I needed to be the boss necessarily, although maybe I was repressing something, but it was just about wanting to kind of start something. And so I remember quite vividly walking into my boss's office at the time, and these sports trusts always, run on the smell of an oily rag, and I knew that they were looking to, to save costs, but then they had a number of events which they liked, and probably a number that they were quite happy to get rid of, and I was in charge of essentially running that portfolio. So I wandered in and said to my boss, "Hey, why don't you make me redundant? Why don't you make my position redundant, and I'll get out of you here. You can save a few dollars, but give me a contract to take away 3 of your big events, which I knew they wanted to keep." So we did a deal, and kind of felt like a win-win at the time. I thought I'd absolutely cracked it, and walked away with, I think the contract was worth 25 grand or something, and
That was enough to get you started.
It was enough to get me started. Yeah, there was a little bit of estate money too, which I'd had from my grandfather. But at this point, it's probably worth saying that there had been very little planning. In fact, less than zero planning around the whole. How's this going to look? Spoke to a few people, came up with a name, and went, well, here we go, let's do this. Didn't even really know what sort of space in sport and recreation we wanted to be. So I ended up taking a sports dinner, which I'd organised back in my Sport Auckland days. Have a Go Day, which was an event all about showing kids a whole myriad of different sports, and a bike event, and those were my kind of 3 core products that I took with me, and then none of them exist any longer now, but it kind of gave me the opportunity to get myself into that space, and we sort of meandered around really for a couple of years. And
did you have to really kind of begin to think about how am I going to take this business, how am I going to develop it? How did you decide where to move it from that initial startup phase?
It was really based around starting to look at, a lot of the first part of the business was based around me being, I think, quite selfish and making the business work towards kind of servicing the life that I wanted to live. Yeah. I'd been a reasonable cricketer, and when I started the business, all of a sudden I kind of lost my weekends. Hadn't given that a whole lot of thought. So my cricket career was kind of like, right, we're going to have to flag that's done, and then started kind of running around on trails a little bit and riding mountain bikes, and thought, oh well, maybe is there something here? Is this is the sort of thing that people are going to want to do? And so started kind of just looking at Total Sport as potentially a business that might head down that track of providing sport and recreation based kind of participation events. And once again, still hadn't really sat down and gone, right, this is absolutely what we want to do. That kind of happened about maybe 4 or 5 years later. So there was quite a bit of meandering relatively aimlessly in those early years. Lots of interesting conversations with accountants and parents going, is this really a good idea?
Yeah. Did you question that point? I mean, is there a business model here? Did you get to, it's a nice model. Obviously you're outdoors and you're doing stuff you really love, but did you really question about whether or not there was an opportunity to make money out of it.
No, didn't question it at all. Absolutely didn't do that. So have, since those days where it was me just doing my thing, we're now at a point where we've got a board and directors and shareholders, and we've sort of looked really closely at this business. And I think it would be fair to say that had we had our time again, if we were completely driven about trying to create a business with a model that was around ticking the box of becoming financially sustainable quickly, you wouldn't go down the path that we did. And the path, our model is, or was, lots of people paying not much money. So you've got to get lots of people doing these events to make, to kind of make money. So we've had a bit of a laugh about it recently, actually. That it ticks all the fluffy boxes. It was a great lifestyle business, and everyone thought it was very cool. It just didn't really have the rigour behind it financially.
In fact, you've got the double whammy, because it's low margin and high risk.
Yeah. It's probably a good case study for how not to start a business, actually. Yeah.
So you obviously learned from it. And if we fast forward to today, what's the model? Because you're doing a lot of events now. You cover, and of course, I suppose the other trend that's worked to your advantage is that multi-sport has become huge now.
Yeah. Certainly the participation-based sport kind of recreation space is large, and we look, you look to what's happening in Europe and the States and the places that are far bigger here. Trail running is enormous, and we were just fortunate that was kind of the product. We went, right, we really want to get in and sort of take some ownership of that space, and there was some luck and some planning around that, but the whole kind of fitness, health and wellbeing market in terms of people getting out doing stuff has really, really grown a lot over the years. So we were in a pretty fortunate position that we managed to get through some tough times. We hung around long enough that people thought, well, hold on, maybe Total Sport must know something. They're still here. So opportunities came our way. We got to the point where we became very, very clear around what the brand was, which is a lifestyle brand. It's very much a service-oriented brand where we're dealing with people's leisure time, and that's something that we take really seriously, because the people that do the events, they're 35 to 50, they're generally earning pretty good money. They're corporate type people a lot of the times. They're not cash poor, they're time poor. So they want something that's slick, doesn't have to be super flashy. They love to get out there, but really these people don't get a lot of time. So when you get them, you got to make them they got to have a good time. You got to send them away and make sure that they're going to come back again.
And you want to send them away with a good experience too. So how do you deal with keeping the delivery right up to expectations?
Yeah. So our model, and something I think that we've been pretty unique, is we kind of feel like we've almost flipped the model on its head. We look for the location. Our key point of difference, and it's no major secret, is that we're a location-based organisation. So our products are run out of some pretty amazing locations, places like the Central Plateau, Waihi, the Coromandel, some really great parts of Greater Auckland too, that a lot of Aucklanders and Kiwis just haven't been to, the West Coast beaches and all that kind of thing. So we almost go to the location now, find the location, scout the location, find an event, and then start promoting it from there, instead of going, hey, here's an event, let's go find somewhere to put it on. Because through continual surveying of our people and asking them, and them just telling us, the thing that attracts them is getting them into these really quite awesome locations that perhaps they wouldn't go to had there not been an event on.
Do you find that you've established a client base, and all you basically do is keep selling different events to them? Is that how it works?
Yeah. That is definitely something we do pretty effectively. As we've got a database of 25,000 thereabouts that do our events. We have a really strong community, and when we survey them every year, we say, how many of our events have you done? Some of them have done up to sort of a dozen of our events a year. Some of them do one or two. So we market hard to them. We continually try to leverage that database and keep telling them what we're up to. But one thing we did learn a few years ago was that we were becoming a bit sort of male centric, I guess. Mostly guys who were kind of rugged, guys that had done this stuff for years and years. What we weren't doing very well was talking to females and families and what we sort of call in our industry newbies or entry-level people. We switched our whole kind of marketing around to knowing that this hardcore would come anyway.
Yes.
They already know that
Yes.
we're there. We had to expand into, talking to this whole different demographic that we hadn't been.
The other risk you ran is obviously you had an aging client base.
Yeah. But it's surprising. I mean, they're aging, but boy, there's some phenomenal social athletes out there at that kind of 50 to 60, 65 level. It's quite incredible. So, but yeah, absolutely, it was aging, and we needed to start bringing in the fresh blood. And we thought, well, if we get the mothers, with the mothers come the family. So we've, things are very, very different nowadays than they were maybe 4 or 5 years ago, to the point where, there's creches at our events now. So mum comes along and runs, dad maybe runs with 8-year-old Johnny, and the 2-year-old is with the babysitter for a few hours. It becomes a legitimate day out for the family.
So how have you had to adapt the business model, I guess, to the lifestyle changes? Because obviously, people are working hard, working long hours, limited recreational time, and therefore they put a high price on that time that they do make available.
Some pretty basic things like keeping things tight. Early starts, no prize giving, getting people there, getting them out there, throwing them out in the bush for a couple of hours, sending them home after having a beer and a sausage, and they're off.
No waiting around.
No waiting around. Yeah. No long kind of drawn out prize givings. Just keeping things really tight. The event, that's kind of the model that we work through for our Auckland events. When about a third of our portfolio is run out of Auckland, they're a little different because people tend to. And regardless of where we put an event on, 50% of the people that do them are from Auckland. So we'll go to the Central Plateau and did an event just last weekend. You can guarantee at least 50% are Aucklanders. Now, if they leave Auckland, they're happy to hang around and waste a bit of time. So you create a whole program for them. Friday night activities, and then Saturday's event day, and then Saturday night's a prize giving and a few beers and that kind of thing. Because at the point in which they sort of head out of Auckland, they've committed a weekend. It's when they're in Auckland that they're like, right, I must do this. I want to do this, but I want to do it really quickly. So it's understanding that. I think that comes from just really understanding the market. Yeah. When
you look at the design of the actual activities, you're catering for as you say, a range of different demographics and age groups and gender mixes and so forth. So, are they all specific to very specific targets?
There's no. I guess yes and no. What we've tried to develop is that the way in which an event, all of our events have some things that are quite similar, and they have about 4 or 5 different options, and there's always one that's at this kind of quite hard, I'm a pretty serious kind of an athlete level.
There's black run ski equivalent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So a good example is an event that we do in Waihi, where we've got at the absolute top end is a 60-kilometre ultra through some very gnarly but beautiful bush through the ranges there, right down to a 5K kids and sort of fun run type thing, and then 2 or 3 events in the middle. So you're hitting all these different markets there, and understanding that you've got to talk to the people that are doing that event a bit differently than the way you speak to these ones. So kind of trying to design events from a perspective where they have quite a broad appeal for everybody, but they don't lose their appeal to each of those individual categories.
How have you found New Zealand's attitude to fitness has changed? Because you've been, your business has been going since 2000, so you've seen that trend. People are more conscious of fitness now. Is that reflective in the way business is growing for you? Yeah,
it really is. Yeah. And interestingly enough, we were probably one of. I'm sure that through those tough times when the global crisis hit, we had 2 of our largest years of increase in numbers, 2 phenomenal years of numbers increasing, and I think that was probably due to that corporate type that I was talking about earlier. Maybe very stress levels were a little up there, needed an outlet. Total Sport really provides people with a great outlet where they can a lot of escapism in there, I think. So that was kind of an interesting time for us. Yeah.
In terms of growth, you continue to grow. You've got 6 or 7 full-time staff, but I imagine there's a lot of contractors pulled in for specific events.
Yeah. So a core of about full-time is about 6, and then peripheral staff or contractors, maybe about another half a dozen of them. And then that number, in terms of what it takes to put an event on, that could grow to, including marshals and all the support staff, up to maybe 150, 200 people on the day of an event, just kind of making sure it's all going. Yeah.
What about all the health and safety issues? Because there's a lot of compliance involved in this sort of thing these days, and management of risk. How do you deal with all of that?
Yeah, that's changed enormously. Probably one area that throughout that whole time in which we've been around has changed the most, to the point where back in 2000, when we were putting on some quite large bike events along Tamaki Drive, there was no need for a traffic management plan. You'd have a little bit of signage and one or two policemen that would help you. Now it's just gone to the absolute nth degree. Where
has it gone too far, do you think?
I think in some cases it's gone too far. Absolute necessity to get some rigour and some some management around that stuff. But it's one of the key reasons why, if you look through our portfolio, you'll see one event on the road. The other 19 or 20 are all off-road, in forests, and dock land, where you can actually avoid the kind of red tape around putting together traffic management plans and that kind of thing. Despite it being, that is actually, one of the key reasons why we headed that way. And it's a biggie.
And what about growth for the business? Is it continuing to grow? You're expecting to see it continue to grow in the future? Yeah,
we are. Yeah, we're really excited. Like, we kind of feel like at the moment we've got a portfolio with Total Sport of about 20 events. That changes. We cull the week, and we actually ditched 3 events last year. Events that we really liked, but they weren't performing financially, and those gaps got filled with products that we feel are going to kind of stand the test of time for the next wee while anyway. And we've seen our numbers grow. We're putting through, like this year, we're projecting to put through 25,000 people. So that many will do our events, and that's come from about 4 years ago. That number's probably more than doubled. So we've had some quite significant growth through the last 3 or 4 years. What we're looking at the moment is, mentioned before, the model of high entry numbers, high participation numbers paying less. We're looking at developing a whole new business unit, which is still about taking people to stunning locations and providing great event experiences for them, but less people paying a whole lot more. So things like recreational cycle tours, for example, which are a pretty big thing happening in Australia at the moment, that kind of thing. It's very much so we're building a whole new business case around that, which the really exciting thing there is it's a completely new demographic that we're trying to sell to. So we're kind of creating some new stuff as well.
What about the fact it's low capital cost and low barriers to entry? So are there lots of people out there who think they can do it as well too?
Yeah, there are. And if you look around, there's just so many events on. I mean, on any weekend in Auckland, you could probably go and do 3 or 4 events in our space. And I think what happens is people start becoming discerning. One thing we've really tried to do is market the Total Sport brand as well as the events, because people tend to know the event that they're doing. For example, the Auckland Marathon. Everyone knows it. No one who does it would know who puts it on. So we try to actually market Total Sport. So if someone picks up an entry form, this is the story that I tell, is they're in a bike shop and they pick up 2 entry forms. One's got a Total Sport logo on it and one hasn't. Hopefully they'll go, Total Sport, I've done one of the other events, or I know someone that has. So generally the ones that it's like any business, I think, generally the weak eventually kind of drop out of the market. But there are low barriers to entry, but in regards to getting permits, you still need to be able to get permits. You still need that bit of paper that says, yes, I can do it. And the likes of the Department of Conservation are pretty discerning as to who they work with. So we have, fortunately, so far had a really clean track record with all those sorts of stakeholders. So really, that's our asset base, is a folder full of bits of paper saying you can put this event on. There's not much else to it.
What about the chance to take the business global? Are there opportunities to do this around the world, run events around the world in this sort of space as well too?
Yeah, I think there is. Yeah, we're working on a concept at the moment which very much is scalable worldwide, and we're just launching it actually in the next couple of months. And it's basically picking one of our events which has been a really strong performer since it started. It'll be 12 years old this year. It's an event called the Coastal Challenge. Very unique. It's all off-road, people running, walking, scrambling, swimming down the coastline. So no roads. It's all about making the most of these fantastic places we've got. And we're talking about taking that one, for starters, to get that one into Australia, to create a Trans-Tasman series. And from there, who knows, it may go further. There's definitely opportunities. We kind of feel like we've kind of got our portfolio here in New Zealand and Auckland, or the greater North Island, I should say, pretty well done now, that we're starting to have to look a little bit further out. So definitely keeping an eye on all sorts of opportunities.